Okay, we are live in our Peak Performers Facebook group, and I have with us Dr. Matthew McNamee from Tiger Medical. How you doing, Doc? How's it in Seattle today?
Oh, it's quite sunny.
Are you joking, or is that true?
Oh, it's really sunny. That's why this thing's closed. My shade's behind me.
Oh, yeah. That's so unusual.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we're going to talk about a topic today that is let's just say it's epidemic among type A personalities, which I am the flag poster child for. I'm a recovered type A. And it's really about the dangers of ignoring stress and then pushing through it when you're stressed. And so we just want to touch on that today a little bit. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's talk. So question number one, Dr. Matt, what happens to the body when a person is chronically in a state of stress response and they do nothing to mitigate it?
Great question. But a lot of people probably relate to it. The body, we're designed to go through these short bouts of stress and then recover. And that's,
so it's actually a good thing.
It's in short bouts. It's a good thing. It's how our machinery gets more resilient. So, the cells get put under stressors, they adapt, the machinery adapts. So when that future mild damaging stressor comes in, they're more resilient to it. There's more robust response to that, but they're supposed to be, in smaller doses of stress and, spread out over time. But the problem is with chronic stressors is it's constant. And just very simplistically, it kind of breaks down that cellular machinery. So you end up getting cell and tissue damage. What people typically are chronically, you're going to see things like, damage to the lining of the gastrointestinal tract because the stress hormones involved will actually separate the cells, and you get things like, microbes and stuff and some of their byproducts that are not healthy and toxic, that's supposed to remain in the gastrointestinal tract, get the bloodstream. You get food particles are supposed to be broken down, get in the bloodstream. That causes an inflammatory response from the immune system. You get more stress on the cardiovascular system because these short bouts of stress are supposed to get the heart rate up and the blood pressure up to get and our blood sugars, right? So we can get through that state of survival. So the body thinks it's in a survival mechanism, and we can use our muscles and run and fight or flee, that kind of thing. So that chronically it's just a stressor on the heart, so you can get things like high blood pressure and other things associated with that. It impacts sleep. That's a big component. So, it's real common that individuals will have problems either falling asleep or staying asleep. Could be both.
Do you tend to get sick more, Dr. Matt, too, when you're in this?
Sure, 100%. Yeah, people probably relate to that. So if they've been stressed, that it's not uncommon, for people to get sick a couple 2-3 days later. And then, like I mentioned, the blood sugar thing before. So chronically elevated, stress hormones will keep the blood sugars higher. And then that can cause things like insulin resistance and diabetes and such down the road. And then, you got to look at the brain component too. And they've done studies where the hippocampus, the memory centers in the brain, actually shrink under chronic stress. So that can impact memory and some cognition as well. So in that state of chronic stress, the body, basically conserves its stores and says, we need to shut down reproduction because that will expend energy. We need to shut down metabolism so we can make it through this period where we need to conserve and basically go through survival mode. So it has an impact on those hormones. And I see that a lot with people that are chronically stressed when they measure these hormones in blood and such, that they are typically, affected or depressed as a byproduct. And then the body, wants to, store calories. So it triggers, parts of the brain, or to seek certain types of food that are higher, calorically dense. So we can store them, typically get that in the abdomen. People get weight gain with it, so
It's all kinds of bad stuff.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? This affects your pocketbook, because everything you just said makes me less of a performer.
100%.
Yeah. Matt, we're going to double down on this because this is what happens. And I was one of these people. I lived for years and years and years with chronic stress. And on top of that, despite how I felt, I always pushed through it, because my will, I had an incredible force of will. I was not going to let how my body felt prevent me from achieving what I wanted to get done every day. That's also a loser's game, isn't it? I mean, because when you push through, what are you setting yourself up for?
Well, very simplistically, burnout. Yeah. I mean, that's just, it's your system doesn't have time to, again, going back to that kind of real basic thing, you're wearing everything out. You're wearing your machinery out. You're losing any sort of resilience with the system. And it's a great recipe for burnout.
Right. And that's rampant in corporate America and entrepreneur circles everywhere. And the pandemic only made it worse. In the healthcare field, it's even worse.
Right.
Well, we've talked about in our company, every one of our clients, we work with them with something called heart rate variability, doing biofeedback with a device. How can that overall strategy of improving one's heart rate variability be helpful in mitigating stress and maybe acting as a mitigating factor against some of these downside effects you're saying?
It definitely can play a strong role in that. Very, basically looking at what it does is, you've got your the unconscious part of the brain has basically two systems in it that runs a lot of the things that we don't have to think about. And that's involved with the autonomic nervous system. And then you've got one branch, which is the sympathetic nervous system, which is, most people can relate to. And I would say almost all the patients I work with are in we call it a sympathetic dominant state. So they've got the gas on. That's just
stress.
That's stress. That's, you're in that state of, heart rate's up. Well, for some people, not everyone feels this, but you get the heart rate up. Some people get sweaty, anxious, irritable, and on edge and not sleeping well. It's that sympathetic state where we're designed to get that short bout of, it's a survival mechanism. So it's very short, and it's to save your life, basically. It's to fight, flee from any sort of like a situation. Most people know it's the fight or flight. And the other side, you've got kind of the brakes, if you want to think of it that way, is the parasympathetic nervous system. And what essentially the HRV training does is it helps basically it helps support the parasympathetic, which is that relax and digest and
recovery,
generate, recuperative type.
Yep.
It helps increase the balance, right, between the gas and the brakes. Instead of having the gas on and barely any brakes, we want to create a little bit more equilibrium with that. And by practicing, using the the device that we use, and there's others out there, you can create a little bit more balance and essentially very simplistically, more stress resilience as a byproduct.
Right, because we're not going to eliminate stressors in our lives. What we can do is learn to mitigate them on demand. That's really what we're trying to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the one simple thing you can do. And so, Dr. Matt, thank you. As always, you're so informative. if you're watching this video or you're going to watch it and you hear yourself and what Dr. Matt is describing, you may feel like you're trapped. You may feel like you're on a railroad track going down there and the tracks are getting wider and wider and you're losing control. You may feel like you're on the edge of burnout. All of these things that you're experiencing that you heard today are all reversible. They're all changeable. You can do something about them. And we want to help you do that. So if you're interested in knowing more, there's no pressure. We want to just talk to you. So raise your hand and make a comment in the chat saying, I'm interested in learning more. Do a thumbs up, do a fist bump, anything that would tell me to reach out to you, because I'm not going to reach out to you if you don't indicate interest. I don't spam anybody. So again, Dr. Matt, thank you. And thank you everybody in our group.
No worries. Take care.